Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Shawn Busse, Paul Downs, and Liz Picarazzi talk about when it makes sense to walk away from a client. Liz, for example, is tired of dealing with bureaucracy and being at the bottom of the food chain. In one instance, she was so turned off that she actually recommended a competitor for a job she no longer wanted. Paul has a simple test. If it's easy work for a bad client, okay, fine. But if it's hard work for a bad client, just don't do it. Of course, there are times in the life cycle of most businesses when that's easier said than done, when you have to accept almost any work offered. Those are the tough ones. Plus, is it time for business owners to take artificial intelligence seriously? And should owners care that a well-known economics firm is predicting a depression for 2030? Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations, brought to you by our principal sponsor, The Great Game of Business, will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which Inc. magazine named the best newsletter for business owners, and which you can subscribe to for free at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Shawn Busse, CEO of Kinesis, which is based in Portland, Oregon, and works with small businesses on marketing, culture, and strategy. Paul Downs, CEO of Paul Downs Cabinet Makers, which is based outside of Philadelphia and makes custom conference tables. And Liz Picarazzi, CEO of Citybin, which is based in Brooklyn, New York, and makes trash enclosures and package bins. The episode is titled, I Would Have Been a Sub of a Sub of a Sub. Welcome, Shawn, Paul, and Liz. It's great to have you here. We spent a lot of time talking about marketing and generating revenue. Today, we're going to talk a little about turning work down, saying no to potential revenue. Liz, I gather you've done this recently. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. So I've had a couple of instances this year that if they had happened last year, I would have been really frustrated that the deals didn't go through. But because these deals didn't work out this year, I am feeling really relieved, like I dodged a couple of bullets. And in one instance, it was sort of like a city project that had come up as potential kind of 2021 range. It was one of these things where I would have been a sub of a sub and maybe even a sub of a sub of a sub. And the distance between me and the decision maker was so long that the thing took a really long time and there was a lot of confusion. And I think it was, it's a government, it's due to bureaucracy. But kind of when we reached the end of it, we had put in our bid a couple of years earlier. And at the time, it was for 2/3 of what was in the RFP. And we are very clear, this 1/3 we're not going to handle. You're going to need to find another vendor for it. They went off. They couldn't find a vendor for it. They came back to us, wanted us to do all of this new product development, to develop something for them. And we basically said no, we haven't been paid a dime. We've been on phone calls with you for over 2 years. You've had these teams just change and the people involved, different cast of characters. So, I don't want to say they broke up with us or I broke up with them, but I think it was mutually understood that it wasn't a good fit. And it was so much of a not a good fit that I even recommended a competitor to them because I knew the competitor could offer that 1/3 that I couldn't. And that actually was kind of the end of it because then they had the full, that other competitor also happened to have the other 2/3 of the stuff. But it was a lot of time. It was very frustrating. And I think what's notable about it is that starting from such incredible excitement, wow, this would land us into this new city agency that we would be able to scale across this huge portfolio down to at the end, actually recommending a competitor. Who in the world would have thought that would have happened when it first started up 2 years ago? So another recent example, especially in the last couple of months, is we've gotten a lot of requests for a different type of trash container, which I have thought that we might want to get into. But when they come in, I realized that we have so many other products that we're really busy with. We actually have 3 product launchings, which I haven't even talked about on here, that I don't want to get distracted from. And so I can feel more confident to walk away. A couple of them are intriguing, and I'll kind of keep it in the background as something in the future we might want to do. But anything with government where there's multiple layers between us and the decision maker, we've decided to stay away from, because it can really suck up the time. You know, if there's a change in the guard or change in administrations, the work that you've been doing can be essentially canceled. And it's just the cost of servicing and the cost of acquiring certain customers that end up to be high maintenance. The problem is that you don't know if they're going to be high maintenance to begin with. And so we're really kind of looking as we move forward for any sort of indicators that they're going to be a pain in the ass.
Hey, Liz, is this a design issue? Meaning like folks are asking you to design solutions as part of an RFP and that takes work and communication, et cetera? Or is this a workflow issue? Meaning that you're selling to somebody who's selling to somebody who's selling to somebody? Or is it both of those issues?
It's actually both.
Okay. Double whammy.
Yeah,
all right.
It's double whammy.
So what I hear you saying is it's like you want to get out of the like selling to people who are selling to people who are selling to people. So that's one piece. And then the other piece around folks asking you to do design services in order to get a job. Are you going to still do that? Or, will you do that if it's selling directly to the end buyer?
I mean, a lot of our design services over time have come from customer requests and almost like a prototyping relationship where we're ideating with them and we're coming up with a solution. That's how we came up with our package locker, our mailbox. We just launched composting actually yesterday in Boston. And that's something where they essentially fund the development. So if we're taking like 80% of existing product and we're developing a new module for them, they'll essentially be paying not a design fee per se, but the cost per unit is a lot higher because they're more like one-offs.
Do they agree to buy it in advance or is it speculative?
They buy it. Yeah, they do agree to buy it in advance.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But with one of them, it would have been incredibly speculative. And it was weirdly speculative while we knew that a competitor had like exactly what they wanted. So then we thought, well, why would we put our funds toward developing this if we don't know that we could definitely develop something that's better than that competitor, when in many other areas we dominate and we're better than that competitor? Why try to get into their space?
Well, there's reasons. If the competitor has a product that on paper looks good, but everything else about that company is a disaster, then you have the opportunity to eat their lunch. Because product development is an indication really of customer service. You have to be communicating back and forth with the client. And you have the opportunity to demonstrate the intangibles of working with you. I guess they're fairly tangible, but they're not just the product. And that can be a real distinguishing element when you're working with clients. We're doing this every day. That's what we do. We get all kinds of requests from people, and we have to decide whether they're any good or not. And I would say 100% of the time, the people who approach us have easy to access, cheaper alternatives. And so if you're going to be developing new products, you got to sort of make it a thing that you do and not just be scrambling. Now, I don't think you intend to become a custom maker because your manufacturing is actually in China, and I don't know how you handle that when you just need one of something. But, it's just like a business decision about, first, do we want to deal with these people? Second, are we the kind of company that can do that? Now, if you got 15 inquiries for a composting bin, that's an indication people need composting bins. But if you tailor your solution to any one of those people, you may not really be making the market acceptable product. You may be too custom to roll out for the whole world. So again, a decision. I'm hearing people want this. They're calling me for it. Do I want to just create the offering that I think is the best fit for the largest number, or actually become a custom manufacturer? And if you don't have in-house manufacturing, it's really hard to be a custom manufacturer.
Paul, in terms of your process, somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'm an architect. I'm, developing this, floor plan for this, big fancy corporation, and we need a giant conference table. There's a design element to that. Do you do that as part of your discovery process? Do you charge for that? How does that work in your business?
We do it for free, and we do a lot of work for free because we are, as I said, we're never the cheap alternative and we're never the fast alternative. So what we have to do is show right from the get-go that we're the best alternative. And that means that my particular selling process is about giving away a design, more or less. But what's more interesting is the process. We had to set up a process by which we can produce designs, and we do that all the time, so we're good at it. But the process by which you share the designs is really customized. And a lot of what we will give away or not give away or show or not show really depends on the configuration of the client and what they're likely to do with if we just handed them, hey, here's some ideas. And so with some clients, you just give them the whole package. Here it is. Say yes or no. And that's usually when you're dealing with a decision maker directly. And then with some other clients where you're dealing with, say, a mid-level corporate buyer, you don't want to do that. You want to show them that you can solve the problem, but you don't want to give them the stuff because they'll just take it and send it to somebody else for pricing. And so we have to decide.
So what's the difference there, Paul? How much? What do you show if you don't want to give it all away?
Well, it's not necessarily what you show; it's how you show it. So we have ways of showing things that don't end up with a easily shareable file in the client's hands. And that's usually doing a screen share, showing them animations, like giving them the whole pitch, but not giving them the files. And then in other situations, like suppose we're dealing with an executive assistant to the CEO of $1 billion corporation. We will give that person everything because what we find is that the CEO is not going to be looking at any of this during his workday or her workday. And so we want to give it to them in a format where at 4 a.m. when they've done everything else, and they're like, oh yeah, I got to look at the table. It's just there for them, everything. And so we've learned through hard experience just how to analyze who are we dealing with and exactly how do we want to share? Do we want to do a complete, like here it is, or a slow strip tease, or, whatever. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And it really depends on the buyer. And we learned a lot of this from sales training, which is to not just give away complete solutions, but to think carefully about when you might want to do that and when you might not want to do that. And once we started being more discriminatory, our sales doubled because we weren't just handing away, we weren't doing free consulting is how they used to call it.
And you attribute that doubling of sales specifically to that issue?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's really about understanding who you're dealing. Again, this is as a custom manufacturer. So if we customize the product, why wouldn't we customize the process? Now, for Liz, she's in a different business. She's trying to amass orders, large orders, or multiple orders for one thing, and then send them off to another continent for manufacturing. And that's not nearly as flexible as I can be, but it delivers product at a much lower price than I can. So I would say her problem is more about just identifying whether she wants to work with someone or not, just like a yes or no decision.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I actually am often able to prototype really fast with my factory, like surprisingly fast. Try this lock, try this handle, let's try it this way. Can we have a, smaller gauge? And I can sometimes get things like within 2 weeks.
In your hands? That's amazing.
Yes. Yep.
And they just fly it over? How do they get it over?
We airship them over. We go and pick them up at JFK. A number of new product launches and components that we're doing in the next month that's how we develop them. And then we usually have a small production run before we go into tooling and do mass production. But especially with some of the city work we were doing where we were iterating and improving, we were able to do rapid prototyping in a way that I think people like you would never have imagined.
Yeah, I didn't imagine it. Well, that's amazing.
But we have a great factory, and we've been with them for 6 years. They know what we want. Things they work.
All right. I take it all back.
Well, you know what? Paul's a value shop. So essentially, he creates custom solutions and solves problems for customers. And Liz is more of a value chain, meaning she's connecting together complex things in supply chain to create value. But what you might be getting into, Liz, is more into the world of the value shop, which is where if you start to solve problems for municipalities in unique ways and you build like a skill set around that, it's really interesting because I think there can be much higher margin and much more difficulty in comparing price if you add that as a component. If you think about businesses that have those components, but they can both manufacture, but they can also do custom solutions, sometimes you can build good complements to one another.
Yep. And that's really the direction that we've gone because we already had the modularity with kind of the size of the trash enclosures. But then we started adding on different modules, and that was based on requests. And they were fairly easy. And it's part of it is because fundamentally we are a modular product. We very rarely, although I have to take it back, for Boston, we did develop a totally different sized cabinet, but it was a modification on what we already had of several components. And, we were able to meet their needs without having to develop a whole new product.
Liz, there was a lot in what you initially told us. I'm curious about a couple of things. One, you mentioned that this discrepancy that you had with the government entity where you thought you had submitted a bid for 2/3 of the project. They thought you submitted a bid for the whole thing. Can you tell us more about what that third was and how that happened?
Right. So the first 2/3 were a product that we already have that was just a little bit enhanced. The third that we didn't, it was essentially parking for trash carts. So the sort of like 1 to 3 yard carts that oftentimes large, housing uses, other buildings, schools and whatnot. They essentially wanted like a shelter or parking for that. And that is something
that they wanted you to build this?
Yeah, they wanted us to build that. They gave us the schematics. And, if I knew I would have a PO, I would have done it. But it felt very speculative and this sort of not realizing for over a year that they didn't have a third of what they needed. Like, why did it take them so long to figure that out? Did the client even have an idea that they misunderstood my quote? Like, that was the part that really bothered me, was like, I felt like I was kind of thrown under the bus. And that the customer, who I would someday like to have as a customer, is now potentially thinking like, oh, City Bin, they were weird with the quoting or they had confusing quoting. It's like, well, no, you had a 24-year-old over there translating the information, and it was a very slow contract as well. So, and then overall, I'll just say, I don't like the idea of these huge contractors that have gigantic contracts with the city that are allowed to just not move. Like, they just sit there. And then when they move, they want you to move fast. And I had this feeling I realized we were going to be miserable. Like, as a team, we were already so confused that we thought, well, this is just not going to work out. So I don't know if that answered your question, but, I'm glad. I may sound like disappointed. I guess what I'm disappointed out is that it took so long to figure that out.
Yeah. You wasted time you can't get back.
Again, this is a problem we have to deal with all the time. We have in our mind a pretty clear picture of different types of clients and different configurations of deals. And some of them are good and some of them are bad. And anytime you're working as a sub, it's already bad. But if you're working as a sub of a sub, it's bad squared. And if you're working as a sub of a sub of a sub, then it's bad times 10 or whatever.
Yes.
We're going to have to check the math after the show.
To the power of 10. How about that?
Exponential bad.
It's exponential bad. Double plus on bad. So you just like, okay, if that's how we have to work, it might be better to just say no or explain why you're saying no right from the get-go. Because that's our thing, is we always do way better if we can get in touch with the final buyer. But frequently we're working through an architect and a furniture dealer. So if they want to keep us at arm's length from the final person, it's like, okay, you could do that, but this will all go better for everybody. We promise you, if we can just talk to the final person. And that's the person who signs the check. That's your client. Why wouldn't you want them to be happy? And they either accept that argument or they don't. But if they don't, then we're often like, you know what? Bye. To hell with you. We don't need you. We got other things to do that are more likely to work, because what you're looking for all the way along are signs that they're willing to participate in the process that you've set up, not necessarily that they're going to try to force you into the process that's convenient for them. And I'm not even sure we can describe this on a podcast, but if you think of a Cartesian coordinate set with a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. The vertical axis starts at the top with a good client who does what you want to do, and at the bottom it's a bad client who's maybe a jerk or just won't participate in your process. And then on the right hand, on the x-axis, you have easy work, and on the left hand you have difficult work. And what you want to do is stay out of that lower left quadrant where you're doing hard stuff for bad clients. And it sounds like in your first example you brought us, that's hard stuff for bad clients. Just don't do it. Now, you can do easy stuff for bad clients with the understanding they're going to be bad clients, but at least what they're asking you to do is falling off the log. And you can charge them extra for being jerks or not. And then the other two quadrants are more like, yeah, you want to do easy work for good clients. That's a no-brainer. Doing hard work for good clients requires depends on the particulars, but that's a very easy matrix to think about clients and work and what do you want to do and what do you not want to do.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is like looking at the team and how are they going to be if they're put in a place where it's like bad clients, bad pay, all of it. Like that's really discouraging. And I've got some great employees that I would have deployed on that then wouldn't be working on the great profit making projects that they're now doing. So I was kind of fast forwarding to this being thrown under the bus. Like imagine being thrown under the bus and lose money on it. That's a major kick in the balls. Like that would really suck.
Hard work and bad clients make for bad situations. Bad work, unprofitable, ties up your team, leaves them discouraged, exposes them to abuse from people who are horrible. Like, why would you do that? It's much easier to just walk away from that. Now, when you first start a business and you're desperate for any kind of client, you end up doing that kind of work. And or if things are tough and you just need to get dollars in the door, you may end up doing that work. But at least you'll have some idea of what you're heading for, which is trouble all the way through.
So, Liz, it occurs to me that this is at least tangentially similar to issues you've raised previously about, I guess, really the focus of your business. Should you focus on where you've had the most success with trash enclosures, or should you try to expand and do other things? Should you do bear-proof enclosures for different markets? Should you expand geographically, even though there's lots of opportunity in your hometown of New York City? Do you see these issues as being related?
I do, and we're actually already doing all of the above. Against the advice of many on 21 Hats, we are moving ahead with our bear proof enclosure. We're doing the test
you
in
sound
Montana.
proud of that, Liz.
I'm looking forward to it. Montana, late September, the bears are going to be attacking the bin. This is the new bear-proof version of the bin. And we've already actually started selling even before getting our certification. So I'm looking forward to the marketing on that. I'm laser focused on that. I don't want to work on this stupid government stuff with wasted time on meetings when I can be working on my bear marketing and the bear video that I have planned and hopefully the viral videos and stuff that really lights me up. So that's happening as well as nationwide expansion. So we're going to a conference in October called the International Downtown Association. And it's basically downtown areas for all major cities, business improvement districts, the same sort of customer base that we have here in New York. Now we're going to be working in other cities. So we have some work moving ahead with those. So yeah, I mean, we've got other things in the pipeline and definitely a lot to focus on and stuff that I think will be really profitable eventually. But the marketing for like the bear proof is going to be a lot different and it's going to be very regionally based. Like even though we have bears in the Northeast, I'm not going to be targeting the Northeast with the marketing. We're going to be focusing more in the mountain regions, resorts, homeowners associations.
I'm intrigued, Liz. You've chosen to go in a number of different directions, not just, against the advice of your friends here at 21 Hats, and not just doing the bear-proof enclosures. You just told us that you've got 3 new products coming. How did you think through this? Is it working so far? Are you at all concerned that you mentioned earlier that this government thing, you were concerned about moving employees from profitable work to unprofitable work? How are you doing all this and making sure that you're sticking with the profitable work?
So luckily, the new product development is within customer work. It's not just like on its own independent. So with the composting program in Boston, we work with them specifically on some of what they needed.
Is that something you hope to turn into a regular line that you're going to offer to everyone?
Definitely. Yeah. So we got a lot of photography from that this week, and it's not major modifications that we need to make, but significant enough, but also enough that it could be marketed as a separate product. Then there's the Bear Proof. And then the third one is called Basket Plus. And that is essentially a combination of trash collection and trash storage. So if you're ever in a city where on the corner basket is overflowing and there's bags on the side of it, what this is a combination of the corner basket and trash storage, like a regular city bin. So those will no longer be sitting on the curb next to the basket. So that's something like, let's say in Philly, I went there for a show this past weekend. They loved it. They loved it way more than people in New York have liked it.
I'm not sure. How does it solve the problem of an overflowing trash can on the corner?
Because the bag that otherwise would have been on the sidewalk is now inside of a bin. That's like a sidecar. It's not a collection bin. It's an actual, like a regular city bin trash enclosure, one module of that.
Yeah, so you don't have to have both the person emptying and a giant truck at the same moment. You can have sort of like a local 5-block area cleaning crew that just walks around, make sure that everything's okay, but they can be stashing it until the truck shows up, because that's a whole different operation.
Well, in downtown associations where they have sanitation ambassadors, which is what they're normally called, they are taking the trash out of the can and just tying it and putting it on the sidewalk. So this was developed as a response to that. We've piloted it in Brooklyn, and it's gone very well. In fact, they ordered a bunch more. But for a number of reasons, which I don't want to go into great detail, but like sanitation in New York doesn't love that product because they are launching, you may have seen in the New York Times yesterday, a new trash can of the future, which is replacing the corner basket. So we've basically been prevented.
Liz, what is the trash can of the future?
I mean, you can check out the Times. It's like an upgrade from the corner basket. It's definitely more modern looking.
It's just aesthetics?
It's aesthetics, and it also is it's rat proof, or I would say rat resistant. I don't know if it'll be rat proof or not, but it was designed to be able to just keep critters from getting inside. And it's also lighter than the standard corner basket, which is definitely a big improvement for sanitation workers that have to hurl the trash.
It sounds like you are very busy. How are your numbers looking for this year?
So we are probably going to be up 40 to 50% this year.
Is that what you were hoping to do?
No, I wanted to double.
Every entrepreneur says that at some point in their journey.
You guys, wait. I've got a little more time. I've got some things in the pipeline. We'll see.
Are you hiring people? Or can you handle all of this?
So we are all really busy right now, and I'm looking for one additional salesperson and additional marketing or operations person.
It doesn't sound like sales is a problem.
Well, with sales, mostly we don't have any hunters on our team. I'm not a hunter, believe it or not. Frank's not, and our other main salesperson. They're all more farmers.
So people are coming to you.
This is all inbound, our work. So I want to hire someone that's doing completely hunting outbound sales.
Who would they target, though?
Business districts, right? You're going to go after business improvement districts?
There's
got to be an association of them, right?
Yeah, there is. That's where I'm going to the conference in Chicago in October. We're an exhibitor with all the business improvement districts.
Yeah, there you go.
How do you become a speaker?
I'm not sure, but I was planning on trying to find a way to take the stage.
What? Just rush the stage?
Maybe not, but I plan on having a webinar shortly after that conference with people that we've met, so I can create my own stage, even if I'm not, a big platinum sponsor there. This is our first time going there.
Have you checked to see if Jennifer Karen is the person responsible for this association's conferences?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You might want to look into that just in case. And she might have some suggestions either way.
You could be dressed as one of her workers to get up there and then just like peel off the thing. It's like, sorry, it's trash enclosures now.
No, a lot of it is going to be, I'm going to observe, because then I can see what sort of speakers they do have. And then when we go to it next year, I can let them know way in advance that I'd like to be one of those people.
Yeah. And you could tell your bear story, maybe. I mean, you'll have some cool material.
I want to hit a couple other topics. Shawn, you had your Catalyst event. How'd it go?
Yeah, it was great. It's our fourth year, second year in person. I think we had about a 10% uptake in attendees. Really great speakers this year. One of the favorite ones for me was David Kale talking about building a $50 million ergonomic furniture company and then selling it. And then kind of as the result of a lot of crazy things, having it totally closed down by the acquirer. So it was cool. It was just really exciting to have, a room full of entrepreneurs and business owners that, are doing remarkable and interesting things and, really care about their teams. And yeah, it was great.
Did you hear anything that surprised you? Anything in the air going on that you can share with us?
The interesting thing, we had 3 breakout groups. One was on differentiation. One was on the doing of the work. And then the third one was on recruiting. And it surprised me the smallest group was recruiting, like by quite a bit. So it was a self-select, you could choose which group you wanted to be part of. And I would say that the recruiting group was maybe half or less than the other 2 groups. So I don't know. I don't know what that means, but I definitely have seen, a lot in the news about the labor situation, getting less onerous, and, people attending the differentiation one in numbers, that's sort of like, how do I get more customers? So yeah, I don't know what that says, but my hunch is that folks are thinking about customer acquisition a little bit more than labor shortage.
I was at a conference last week as well. I would have loved to have gone to yours, but I chose to go to the one put on by my sponsor instead. I hope you understand, the Great Game of Business. And there were a couple things in the air there that took me a little bit by surprise. I led a conversation with a group of, 150 CEOs, just talking about what their concerns were. And I kind of sheepishly said to them, I put out this daily email newsletter about what business owners should care about. And my sense doing that is that when we look back at this year, we're going to remember this as the year of ChatGPT and AI and the start of something, huge. And I said, I feel sheepish saying that because I've been fooled before. And, we just got past the whole metaverse thing that was supposed to change the world. And I'm not entirely confident that's going to happen at the moment. And I asked them, how many of you think AI is going to have a big impact on your business, your industries? And every hand went up. And I asked, how many of you are playing around with it and looking for ways you can put it to use right now? And every hand went up, which convinced me that probably is the story of the year. There were some great examples. There was one company that they do outsourced IT for businesses around the country. So they get tickets coming in all day long. They've trained an AI bot to sort those tickets, to perform triage, make sure that the tickets go to the right place. But not only that, they've trained it on 20 years of their history. So when the bot sorts the tickets, it also makes suggestions for what the solution to the problem might be. I'm curious, does that make sense to you guys? Are you guys playing with it? Thoughts?
I have thoughts. I think that we may have reached peak AI hype, and so everybody's thinking about it. And what we're going to see is people really figuring out, particularly for smaller businesses, like, what would I actually do with it? So there have been some interesting, helpful things that I did with it over the last few months, but it hasn't changed my average day at all yet. And I'm struggling to figure out how to make it have an impact on my company. Because most of what we do, AI ain't good enough. We need actual I. And so I just, we're going to see how it all plays out. But when you see it tagged onto every possible situation, like need a cup of coffee, use AI, and Yeah, that's just obviously nonsense. But like any new technology, it's going to take a while for it to really settle into whatever it's good at. That's my opinion.
The other thing I found interesting, and this kind of gets to, Shawn, your point about people not seeming to be as interested in the topic of recruiting. We seem to have these two contradictory narratives taking hold at the same time. On the one hand, AI is going to take everybody's job. On the other hand, we're being told this labor shortage is here to stay.
Well, the shortage of labor is not necessarily related to what AI does. Like, AI is not going to fix my toilet. So even if the AI spit out instructions for somebody about how to fix a toilet, doesn't mean they can fix the toilet.
But if the labor shortage will not be as acute if AI removes a lot of jobs, which a lot of people expect it to.
Well, I don't know. If it removes the jobs, we've heard this story over and over again. Like, okay, you're not coal mining, so soon you'll be a software developer. No. The people who are coal miners, it's hard to turn them into software developers, and it's going to be just as hard to turn software developers into plumbers or carpenters. Completely different skill sets. So,
well, the other narrative is that AI is going to handle software development too. So,
right, but I'm saying that the where AI is supposed to be reducing jobs and freeing up people, those people aren't necessarily suited to the kinds of jobs where there's labor shortages. So that's my experience. We're trying to hire people who are good with their hands, and typing all day doesn't teach you anything about how to deal with the kind of work we do.
So you're saying that there is a world where it does make sense that you could both have AI eliminating jobs and
absolutely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, it's there. AI isn't going to replace. I mean, sure, you'll have robots picking fruits and food and all that kind of stuff to some degree, but there's just a ton of jobs where it's either really hard for a robot to do or it just doesn't make economic sense. And then what it's wiping out, what I see it wiping out, and I'm not too upset about this, but I kind of feel bad for folks in it, is kind of what I call dumb marketing jobs. And there are so many of these, like writing blog posts that are just low value, high quantity, doing a lot of edits in Photoshop, making a background different from what it was before. Like, these are not jobs that require a high level of intelligence. They just require a small amount of technical skill. AI is going to just wipe those out. It already is. And I mean, I'm thankful for our company because we've never liked to do that work at all anyway. So great. But there are tons and tons and tons and tons of freelancers and firms. I mean, just for perspective, my employee went to a Renaissance fair. He's a total nerd. And he met multiple people who were like, yeah, AI put me out of work. Like, already, Well,
I mean, so they said that. Is that what actually put them out of work, or are they just crappy employees? And the boss is like, shrug, AI, get out of here. It's an easy.
I don't think they're necessarily crappy employees. I just don't think that the work that they had been doing, there was a good alternative for it, even though it was not very high value.
Right. Well, and a lot of that work has already been outsourced to like overseas VAs.
Yeah.
Some of that. So it's almost like there's 3 tiers of people that do that. And the most expensive one is the one in the US who's paid a lot.
All right. Let me throw another one at you. At this conference, the Great Game Conference, every year they bring in economic forecasters from a fairly well-known firm called ITR, and they have a conversation about where the economy is going. This is of great importance to the company behind the Great Game, SRC, because they view their business as being tied directly to the GDP. So where the economy goes, they go. That's not the case, obviously, for most business owners. And my experience in talking about the economy is most business owners don't even want to think about it because they have no control over it. They focus on what they can control. But in this conversation they had on the main stage, the guy from ITR said that they are predicting a small recession in the next year or so, but nothing to worry about. But they are predicting a depression in 2030. Depression with a D. And they predict it will last for 6 years.
Can I jump in here?
Please.
All right. ITR sends speakers to Vistage and to some of the other trade groups I've in, and been hearing basically the same spiel with moving dates for the last 10 years, which is that things are, things are what they are today. Tomorrow's most likely to be like it is today. We may have some mini bumps and doom in 6 or 7 years. And nobody ever, after listening to one of these things, goes back and checks what the prediction was 8 years ago. Because I believe the first time I heard a speaker from ITR, we were supposed to be in the Great Depression right now. And it's just like, okay, hey, I was raised by economists, so I'm skeptical.
You mean that literally in your household,
yeah, my
correct?
father is a very well-known economist. And here's my short take. Economics is religion with numbers. It's just about faith.
Did that come from your father, or did you come up with that?
No, it's just an observation. These guys make a living by getting up in front of people and giving a very slick presentation. And they didn't see COVID coming. They didn't see any of the stuff that actually happened. Big events that appear out of nowhere have a huge effect on our economy. The Ukraine war, the COVID, These guys have got nothing in their models that allows for that. But it's a pretty good living to just get up there and say, okay, doom coming, and button down your hatches now, but you'll be okay right now. You don't ever have to do anything today. You just get something to worry about for 10 years from now. And it has not arrived, as far as I can tell.
I couldn't agree with you more, Paul. I think so much is a function of, it's very much religion, but also in many ways a paradigm of thinking that was built around a period of time that was much, much more stable in terms of global change. And today, like these events, say September 11th, even how we responded to the pandemic, like these are these massive black swan events. And like their models they can't deal with that. And that's the era we're in. We're just in an era of rapid, unpredictable change that can swing both ways. It can swing positive and it can swing negative. But I think they treat it like this like crystal ball that's predicated on what's happened in the past. And the past is not a good guide for the future. It's just not.
I agree. What else have you got that we can scoff at, Lauren?
I think I'm done. You scared me off.
Yeah, we're a pretty hard crew here.
All right. My thanks to Shawn Busse, Paul Downs, and Liz Picarazzi, and to our sponsor, The Great Game of Business, which helps businesses use an open book management system to build healthier companies. You can learn more at greatgame.com. Thanks, everybody. Wait, don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN@21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.